Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live broadcast. I'm Steve Altition, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Family Law. And today, in celebration of upcoming Father's Day and celebrating fathers, I'm here with transformation coach Mike Forrester to talk through the role that childhood trauma plays in parental decision-making, personal decision-making, and other decision-making, and how fathers can put in the work to break these generational cycles and create a new legacy for their children. That was a lot. So, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. So before we start in, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and really how you came to be a men's coach?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I came about being a men's coach because I walked the path of going through childhood trauma, both mental, emotional, and physical. And I then brought that into the relationship with my wife and my children. Nearly ended up, divorced, alienated from my kids, not at all where any of us, especially with our kids, want to be. And as I began healing, I saw things change and repair, and what was distant with my children became close. To quote my son, our relationship was non-existent, and I was authoritarian, and he just skirted away as fast as he could to try and avoid conflict. So it was one of those of seeing the change that happened within my family. I knew that other men could, heal, transform, and experience this same kind of relationship within their families, because none of us want to be, alienated or away from our children, much less our grandchildren. And if we carry on, the trajectory that we're on in our relationships, we may be able to guide our children as they're younger, but when they age, they make their own decisions. No surprise, we've all done that same thing. So in knowing that, that was the freedom I wanted to bring to other men and see that transform the legacy that we leave to our children.
Thank you. That really, A, doesn't sound easy. and B, sounds like it takes some real kind of internal decision making. So the first question I have is, how does like a father's childhood trauma end up influencing, our parental decisions, and the parental decision making process?
Yeah, it's not just like you had alluded to in the intro. It's not just the parental decisions, but it's the stuff at work, in our relationships, both friend, with our spouse, everything. But within the parental realm, I'm going to behave a certain way. And it's usually been set in the pattern by my mother and father. And so, as much as I swore, Steve, I was like, I'm never going to be like my parents. Um, Steve, I ended up being the same way because I didn't have a trajectory of where I was going. It was like heading off from, the Pacific Northwest and saying, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. There's a whole lot of road to still cover and destinations to get to. If I'm not specific, I may end up in Maine as much as I may end up in, New Orleans. And so it was just one of those that, as a parent, when you behave, your children are going to learn. And I'm sure we've all seen our children, whether they're 2 or they're 22, that they have that same kind of maybe voice, reaction, mannerisms, and people go, oh my gosh, you're just like your dad, you're just like your mom. And sometimes that's accepted nicely. Other times it's like, that's the last thing you want to hear. But what we've had set for us is what we're going to repeat. And the vast majority of us don't have an example that we're really in love with, right? That we like. And so there's that dislike of what we've experienced, and yet we're often blind to the fact that we're repeating it. And so our children are going to pick it up. And if our children pick it up, you can imagine they're going to parent that same or very similar way and pass it along to your grandchildren. So much how, you've had guests on here that have talked about a financial legacy, we're going to leave a behavioral and emotional legacy to our children and grandchildren. Either the one that we've learned or the one that we're being intentional and working on that healing to give something that's, that's pulling, that's drawing our children in, that's creating that family cohesiveness, right? And so what we've experienced is going to directly guide how we behave, react, and our children will react to us.
I know, I was reading some of your stuff, and that, I mean, that makes sense. It's the sins of our father. We talk about, how we just sort of do what they did and can't seem to get out of it. We kind of get in our own way sometimes. And you used the term self-sabotage. And I thought about that, kind of like getting out of your own way to try to make things better. But what that self-sabotage phrase that struck me.
Yeah.
Is that something that's like you're conscious doing it?
No, unfortunately it's not, but you're following through with it. I mean, let's take it from the case of New Year's resolutions, something we're all familiar with. We have the best intentions. We go to the gym, we're watching what we eat, but then we get stressed out. We head for the ice cream, donuts, soda, whatever it is that's not on a list that's, approved, that we have those intentions for improving our health with, and we're right back to it. And sometimes we're even looking at the actions and seeing them more severe than they really are, Steve. And so something may have gone wrong at work that typically wouldn't have been a big issue, but I'm looking to subconsciously, again, I'm looking to have things occur that make my limiting beliefs true. If I believe that, hey, I'm a bad dad, I'm not a valued coworker, I'm not whatever positive thing you would want to be. If you see yourself in a negative light, you're going to look for stuff that does that. If the bills are coming up and you're like, I'm never going to have control of my finances, you may subconsciously go on a financial binge and splurge on stuff that you don't then have money to pay the bills. And you're like, look, I knew that was going to happen. That's just the way I am. That's just the way life is for me. That kind of subconscious stuff that you're doing, unintentionally, reinforces those beliefs that you have that are holding you back. So if you're like, I'm not a good dad, you're going to do things that, make you look that way.
Yeah. And, we're a large portion of what we do is family law, which includes divorce. And it seems like this can be especially destructive if you do get in a divorce and become, a co-parent and maybe not living all the time with your kids. I mean, it's kind of like, oh, I knew that was coming. I mean, it's my fault too.
Yeah. And we can look at our parents, Steve, and know what to expect from them. Right.
Yeah.
And we know their mannerisms. Our children are no different. They know what to expect from us. And I don't know about you as a dad, but I never meant to hurt my children in the process. I had good intentions. Like when my son and I went to the gym, I meant to guide and instruct him on how to work out better, on how to improve his form. But what he heard was, I'm not enough. What I'm doing isn't right. So, I'm not measuring up to dad expectations. And that was nowhere in anything that I was saying, trying to imply. But it's one of those that when you get into that pattern and you've gotten used to, dad's going to say negative things about me, which I did to my son, he then receives those almost through a lens. It's almost as if you put like a pair of headset, like a headset that's receiving it through a filter, just like you would your glasses. And that's what he's hearing, and it's impacting his heart. And then there's so many of us as fathers and husbands ourselves, we're wanting to measure up to our dads and their expectation. We repeat that with our children. Like I talked about, my son not feeling like he was enough, even in the gym. Man, I mean, take it and put it into all the other areas of your life. It colors that. And yeah, so it's one of those of we can know what to expect and get used to the other person's perspective. And so it's be cautious of what you say and how you say it.
Yeah. And that leads to, but like you were talking, they're creating this cycle of and passing along your bad habits, this unhealthy pattern. And that, this legacy, this generational legacy isn't the one you want. So, but what I'm taking, what you believe is that isn't necessarily true. Our past doesn't have to dictate our future path. So how do we go about breaking that cycle?
Yeah. I mean, if that were the case, you come out of the womb and your behaviors are all set for you and there's no luck, or anything else that you can do. You're just out of control. Your actions don't matter. And that's far from the truth. I mean, we've learned these patterns, we've acted on them, and we get a result. Much like you would see in physics, you move a ball and it's got, the physics aspect, it's got gravity, everything working against it to stop it. Well, our actions are going to put us in a specific position. So as we change our thoughts, it changes who we see of ourselves and how we act. And so for me, I had trained my children to expect me to react and behave in a certain way. And even after I was healing and changing, Steve, it still took time for them to believe that I was somebody different, to rebuild that trust that I had destroyed over the years because of who I had been. And so the first thing is to really, one exercise that I walk men through is imagine you're 65. What do you want your relationship? Not as far as just as your inheritance, right? The legacy that you're leaving financially, but what does it look like relationally? Who are you in life? What does your life look like? What are your activities? What are you doing? Okay, well, we need to back into that. Most of us are going to find where we want to be, we're not on that path to get there, right? If I want to get, to the Pacific Northwest from Southern California, I need to head north, not east. And so making decisions on who I want to be will then determine the actions that I take on how I'm acting, how I'm behaving, how I'm interacting with people. And from those places, that's where the change begins. But just saying, I don't want to be like my parents, it doesn't get me there, Steve. I need to know who I want to be and then start acting accordingly and thinking in that direction as well.
And that's sort of where coaching comes in, it sounds like. I mean, I wanted to be a better golfer, but my swing pattern never really made it work right. There is actual things you can learn to do.
Correct. I mean, it's like if I look behind you, you've got cookbooks, you've got Alton Brown, you've got pasta books, right? You learned from somebody else, whether it's from friends, mentors, coaches, podcasts, books, seminars, whatever. If we don't know how to do something, that means we need to learn from somebody who could just be barely ahead of us or, steps ahead of us. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love learning from Alton Brown, just like you. But do I see myself becoming an Alton Brown? No, that's something that it's like that takes concerted effort in that. But as far as being a father, yeah, that's absolutely where I want to be. I'm willing to invest the time. And I'm sure you found this out. There's nobody else I can change other than me. And so I need to invest my effort, my energy, my focus on me, because as I change me, the environment around me is going to change. And personally speaking, I've seen where my wife was afraid to do anything because it would, in my insecurity would set me off. It's given her the space to now go and get, her degree. For my children, it's given them a feeling of safety where they want to come back into a relationship. And now I have a relationship with my children, and they've seen the growth and the change that I've gone through, which has encouraged them in making their own changes, whether it was, getting through anxiety, getting through self-doubt, just going up the corporate ladder, right? Those different challenges that they have before them, they're like, hey, dad wasn't afraid to work on himself and go through these challenges. It encourages them. So where we're expecting to be flawless, our flaws actually encourage and give like a space, a permission to work on themselves to our children and those around us.
That leads to one thing, and I didn't know if I wanted to ask this, but you had talked about using affirmations and affirmations um, almost as a tool or as a therapy. And first of all, not many people in the world know what an affirmation is, so I was impressed. But that really is kind of the deal. You ask yourself questions and make yourself answer them.
Well, and if I look back, Steve, I was asking myself all sorts of questions. Like I was asking myself, why can't you get this right? Why are you always broke? Why are you such an idiot? All these self-deprecating questions that kept me down. Well, no offense, but I don't want to be my own worst enemy. None of us do.
Yeah.
And so with affirmations, which is, just so we backtrack a bit, affirmations are statements. So saying, I love myself, I'm confident in, all areas of my life. It's comments or statements about us and who we want to be. Like we talked about, looking at our life and the trajectory we want to go on. We're asking why questions. Why is it that my confidence is ample for taking on this thing? Like, why am I so well equipped for this job that I have right now? Why am I patient with my children? Why do they feel loved? It's asking positive questions about who you want to be and how you want to be seen, because you get in the shower, you go for a walk, your brain is functioning and it's looking for answers, right? Same thing when I ask, why are you such an idiot? I'm going to find plenty of reasons. If I'm looking to validate that question, I will find them. If I start looking for, why am I, such a secure and loving father? I'm going to start seeing those things pop up. It's almost like you get a blue car, you start seeing blue cars everywhere. It's the same thing. You're going to start seeing more of what you're asking about, and you will find solutions for those questions. Your brain is going off on a journey to find the solution and bring it back to you. So affirmations are questions which we've already been asking, but we're just being intentional in what we're asking rather than flippant and self-deprecating in the process.
It kind of reminds me of sometimes with when my kids, they would say, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this. But then you ask them a couple questions and they, as they go through their brain, you can hear them kind of go, oh yeah, I know you do that. Oh yeah, I do that. Oh, maybe I can do this.
Absolutely.
Is there kind of a crazy question? What for you? I know you also you're like this transformational coach. You want to you're helping men transform into being better. I mean, one another word. When should they come to you? Is this one of those things that you better start early or it's too late? Or is this more of a jump in whenever you can?
It's jump in when you're sold on the idea, or I say sold on the idea. We don't always have the confidence to be fully sold. So let me say it as, I want this so bad. I don't necessarily know the path, but this is what I want, because it's gonna take work. It's just like me reclaiming my health, Steve. If I don't go to the gym, but I want to be healthy, how far is that gonna get me? If I don't eat healthy, how well is that gonna set me up for that? So the time that to really jump in is when you know that you want something different. Because if you're like, I might, maybe, you're not committed. It's not going to do anything to benefit you in jumping in and putting in that effort, because it's just like, I have 30 pounds to lose. If I'm just kind of passive about it, nothing's going to happen, and I'm going to have an excuse to then later fuel that truth that I believe, that limiting belief, right? That, I can't lose weight. I've tried this before. It didn't work. When you're at the point that you're like, I want something different, I know that there is something different for me, which that was the catalyst for me, Steve. I just got to a point, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm seeing other men around me love their life, enjoy their family, enjoy their career and where they're at and their path. This is not okay that I don't enjoy where I'm at. I'm angry. I'm not happy with where I'm going. Like, life, this is not the life I want. This isn't what I was dreaming of. When you're at the point that you really want something else, that's the time that I would say jump in, because otherwise you're going to sell yourself short on the whole process. And that's not what I want to see anybody go through.
You mentioned the path. Mm-hmm. I could be completely wrong, but tell me, is there more than one path? I mean, is everybody's path the same?
There are similarities, but if you and I were both hurt, let's say we both grew up, we're twins, Steve. Okay. We've both gone through the same experiences.
I have hair.
What's that?
I have
you
hair.
got the hair in the family,
but it's white.
Hey, but you got the hair. I mean, mine, it's not there. So you ended up with a hair gene, me not so much.
I like it.
But if we had gone through the same experiences, environment's the same, everything we've been told is the same, you still have a unique identity that's your imprint, your perspective, how you see things, what drives you, your passions. Those are all unique to you. So what creates that drive for you to go after healing could be different than what is driving me. And how I saw things could be very different, even though we experience the same thing, could be very different. And so what I need to heal from could be different from what you're healing from. And the same goes for goals. I mean, how many of us have the same goals, come New Year's? We all might be like, hey, I want to lose weight, but it could look different. You could be like, hey, I want to look like Arnold. I'm like, no thanks, I don't want to be that big. So our end goal could be different, and the way we perceived things that happen, so the healing process can be different, but be the desire and the drive to be healed, I would say that is uniform. There's certain things that you can walk through that will bring about that healing to get you there.
And this is part of the coaching process, is learning those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's what we each have experienced is the world as we've seen it, right? Going back to what you and I as twins, you experienced life one way, I experienced another, even though the same event occurred. And so my reality of life is different from your reality. And so we need to look back at that and go, oh, wow, what did I buy into? What do I believe? What's holding me back? And what are my gifts? Because we can walk along the same road, but we may have a different gait, right? Your path may be a little bit different. Maybe I'm on crutches. Maybe you're, walking a little more upright. But it's a little bit different process for each person, right? Yeah. Just like, when you're holding a case, there's going to be similarities, but there's also uniqueness to each one. And so that's the same thing with each of us healing and the coaching and the conversations. Yeah. So
you may have just answered this, and we're running out of time, unfortunately, but if someone kind of one last, if someone were to walk up to you or call you or go on to, email you and say, I just don't think I can do it. I mean, what do I do? I mean, what's the first thing you would tell them?
Strangely enough, I don't tell them anything. I ask a lot of questions because
formation.
Well, it's it's questions, but it's not the affirmations. It's more of, where do you see that you're at? Because you can see where you're at, Steve, totally different than where I see you. And it's that, again, that reality of where we see ourselves that we need to climb out of. And then it's like, what are you after, Steve? What does your heart really want? What's the life you desire? And so going from there, and that's why, you know, on my website, I try and book a call, because I want to talk to you, because you, Steve, are different than Bob. It's different than John. And getting in touch with where you see that you're at and where you want to go and the challenges you face is something that needs to be understood in order for us to both say, okay, great, let's look at this realistically, and let's talk about how we get you there. Because if you see like Elon Musk and you're like, hey, I want to invest in my family and make, like, you know, this financial legacy for my family, if I'm not making the same money as Elon Musk, I may not be able to see myself in that place. But if we stop and go, okay, hey, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to be able to do, and we see that trust and relatability in the journey, then we can see ourselves getting to that place, that desire that we're, you know, that life that we want to live, that desired outcome. So it very much starts with a conversation with lots of questions, because too often we don't even think about what a life would be like, or even if we deserved it. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation to have.
I like that. It's like sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Wow. Unfortunately, we now have just about run out of time. Before we go, I'd really like you to let people know, if who are interested in watching, you know, how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. So Hi Coach Mike is where you can find me on all social media platforms. If you find yourself in the place that you're like, hey, this resonates, and you think you're the only man in the midst of this, then you can jump on and listen to Living Fearless Today. And that's the podcast where I have other men on that share, hey, I've gone through this journey and now I'm here. And you begin to see, hey, there is a better life, and it can even be available for me. So often it's those small steps of just seeing somebody else. So
I love it.
If they want to reach out, they can get me at highcoachmike.com as well.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being here today, to, you know, talking about the kind of the role that childhood trauma does play, and how fathers, how everyone, but how fathers, you know, can put in the work to break that, and kind of not only breaking their problem, but potentially breaking their kids' problem and their grandkids' problem and their great grandkids' problem. I think that's just wonderful. So thank you for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Anytime. So everyone else, thank you for joining us today as well. Anyone has any further questions at all on today's topic, you can always post it here. We can get you connected with Mike. And so until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and be well.